Everything that you can think of has got something to do with Rome. Perhaps if the Romans hadn't come along, we'd have a completely different culture. The army, it was a professional army. To heck with glory. You're fighting for pay, and you want to get the battle over in time for lunch. And the way to do it is to be as professional as you possibly can.
I've always been strangely fascinated by the legendary mythos of the film Gladiator. For a movie that came out nearly 25 years ago, not only is it one that still holds up in terms of action spectacle, it's also one that is still the most memorable in its status as a true epic. By so many rights, this is a film that should not exist because the production of this movie was incredibly chaotic and plagued with issues to say the least. There was barely any script, the stunts were intense, and even one of the main supporting actors died before his scenes were even finished. But this doesn't even begin to describe the sheer amount of stress, tension, and headache that would have went into making this film as the production budget continued to balloon into the millions of dollars.
We're in at 4 o'clock this morning to make a start. We've got 250 Germans, 300 Felix troops, 100 Felix archers, about 80 cavalry.
And we bring them through in batches. Otherwise it's like a major stampede. Pick up their costume, change, then we put them in the mud pit.
So why? What is it about this film's mythology that feels incredibly exciting, enchanting, or just plain old interesting to watch? How can such a chaotic storm of a production create the perfect storm of a film where everything that could have gone wrong did, but it ended up making everything feel exactly right? Let's dig deeper, starting with the surrounding landscape and period, the Roman Empire.
The first time Ridley phoned me and said, you know, what about a Gladiator movie? I just started laughing because I was thinking about men in skirts and sandals. And then he said, no, it's not like that. And he started telling me the story. And I thought, this could be good. This could be pretty amazing. And I went out to England in the first week when they were shooting out there. And, I went down to deepest, darkest Farnham in the south of England. And it was snowing, it was cold, it was muddy. I mean, you've never seen mud like this. As we were driving off the road into this wood where the battle was taking place, you suddenly left the 20th century behind. And there's an image which keeps repeating in the movie, which is Russell Crowe before fight, reaching into the earth and touching the earth. I mean, he's a farmer, that's the idea. He needs to touch the earth. And I didn't know about this image, but I remember sitting there with Ridley in this muddy field, and because I suddenly had been shifted from the 20th century to somewhere else, I remember reaching down and just taking up a clump of earth, and suddenly I was in the movie.
I think part of the charm for the Gladiator film comes down to the fascinatingly interesting period that it takes place in. The somewhat ancient world and period of early human history with the Roman Empire reign is one of the most exciting, crazy, and legendary periods of time in our history. The world was filled with kings and queens that conquered large nations and regions of the world, which too had its fill of generals, lieutenants, captains, and all other factions of this one huge army. There were people learning to navigate their way through such a chaotic mess where poverty seemed to spread far and wide, just as much as the grasp of the Roman Empire extended out to Europe and northern Africa. While it is an age-old story of the rich looking down upon the meek, it was one during a time that felt incredibly primal and raw, like it was at the very beginning of humanity finding its way towards proper civilization, and in the process making so many mistakes and advances along the way. All of this makes for good reading as you learn about how a large society developed an ancient civilization with sophisticated infrastructure, military strategy, and governance. But this period also had some inherently interesting characters and notable figures that still get referenced to in today's time. While each Roman emperor wasn't created equally, there was still nevertheless a large variety of fascinating figures from Nero and Julius Caesar, with one facing the devastation of a city burning and the other expanding the Roman Empire until it eventually became one of the greatest conquering civilizations of all time. But to me, none were more interesting or more notable than Marcus Aurelius, whose works of meditations later became unknowingly the origins for Stoicism. He was a noble man and one of great respect and status who seemed to echo such wisdom that was unheard of in the history of humankind, and more so remarkably during a period that was filled with such bloody violence and class disparity. How can someone have such intelligence and a unique outlook on the world that seemed to rise above all of the monstrosities and madness that still stand the time today?
Instead of doing the line from here, it's kind of a shout. Yeah, prove your valor yet again, bollocks. But he comes right up to him here, and he says it very quietly. Yeah.
He said, fair enough. Yes. Yes, Ridley?
Is it okay?
Yeah, that's cool, he said.
Oh, cool. How can I reward Rome's greatest general?
Let me go home.
But with me, when you read something, it's like a chord goes ding.
I will never know how he could do so, but it's people like Marcus Aurelius that to me set in motion this idea of nobility and good going forth into the world and fighting the bad and evil darkness that surrounded it. It was for people like Marcus Aurelius that gave birth to the concept of a noble man, and perhaps of a noble hero in the then modern era. I'm not saying Marcus Aurelius was the first hero, but he had something noble about him that to me goes into what sets the cornerstone for why the film Gladiator was so interesting to watch and will almost always be entertaining to watch in the future. Because the idea of Marcus Aurelius and of everything that he stood for extends directly into the film's protagonist, Maximus Decimus Meridius. As we see in the introduction, he is the unofficial adopted son of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius. He is the noble son that he never had, but who was treated like one not just because Marcus sees himself reflected in him, but because he suspects and maybe believes that Maximus is a better man than he ever was, and potentially ever could be. A true protege gifted with the talent to be a natural leader and of good heart in this world, who knows that there's more to life than just fighting battles and of conquering all the lands in the world. He was someone who would take pause to think about the life of a bird flying amongst the background of a battlefield and to perhaps ponder deeper on the meanings of life itself. From these early moments on, we fall in love with Maximus because he is that idea of a man that we all hope to be. The noble hero, the brave warrior, the just conqueror who thinks deeper on his own humanity just like Marcus Aurelius did so, and who isn't so caught up on the materialistic aspects of our world, but of the deeper introspective feelings that ring truer to our nature.
Do not be troubled, for you are in Elysium, and you're already dead! Brothers, what we do in life echoes in eternity.
All of this makes him the perfect protagonist because he follows to a T the story of a legendary hero going on an epic journey to save the day. Except what's really interesting about Gladiator is that it's not actually a hero saving the day kind of story, but rather a complete revenge story filled in with some elements of redemption. It takes a hero on this heroic journey to a degree, but knocks them down completely so to their lowest of levels by stripping everything that has meant so much to them in their life and in of their world, and that were essentially the only reasons for their purpose and will to live, the hero's family and the hero's career. Take away these two aspects from anyone and you'll likely break that person, and for good reason. They're essentially what we all live for. This becomes the fuel and catalyst for Maximus to begin a transformation from the revered legendary hero into the vengeful, angry warrior, betrayed by those around him and who turns toward the bitter and cold darkness that surrounds him. For a moment, we see this broken man lose all hope and will to live. We see how he cares not for himself or for anyone and is essentially just existing but not thriving, until he eventually regains his purpose as the hero that he once was, not for himself, but for others. At first, these include his fallen emperor and then his fallen family, but eventually it becomes his peers, his colleagues, his friends, his admirers, his captors, and finally everyone else around him. Maximus uses his plight of vengeance to avenge those who he cared about, but in doing so, he becomes this vessel to inspire change within the whole broader society of the Roman Empire. This is somewhat surprising both to him as a character, but also towards what the story was to me unintentionally doing so. It's an epic revenge story at its core, but then it subtly becomes about something else, with Maximus showing us the way of aspiring for something better than what and how we've all been living. In a world that's fallen to its most primal and bloody nature, filled with a literal dog-eat-dog type of environment, Maximus resurrects both himself and everyone towards a higher thinking, that the way we can live together as humankind hand can be done more nobly and more justly. He becomes the hero we aspire to, but that also in turn makes us become the heroes ourselves along with him, so that ultimately we can come together to be better individually and collectively. Through one hero are many others created. And all of this takes place inside the field of the epic battleground that is the Colosseum. For many, and indeed for myself, this is part of the great charm of this movie. It's an epic location. It's an epic stage. It's an epic environment that becomes the perfect setting for so many amazing action scenes that are still memorable to this day.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
Part of what's great for these sequences is their use of practical effects, and seeing those camera trickeries when you watch someone being decapitated, where you can really feel like the sword is slashing right through that person's neck, and it just all feels so real. Likewise with the tigers, those aren't just being put there with CGI. The Colosseum is truly the perfect place for setting the stage for the hero to rise both in their spiritual journey and through their physical one. For Maximus, it is where he starts off as a slave, forced to fight battles for his master, and it's when he's at his lowest point of his life. He's lost everything, but the Colosseum forces him to risk losing even more with the lives of his fellow slaves, whom he slowly begins a friendship with, and of course, the life of his own. Spiritually, he is defeated, yet forced into a world where he must continue on fighting. This leads into his physical transformation as he goes from becoming a reluctant slave fighter to an iconic slave warrior who is a champion not just for other slaves, but for the roaring public who come to watch, support, and eventually worship him. He becomes a man of legend, the stuff of fables and a symbol of strength and honor. These are the words he once lived by when he was a general, and these are the qualities that he still embodies as a slave, for which the public adore him for. They idolize him and they admire him. They see beyond the body of a slave and see the body for the respected leader and warrior and human being that he is. Whether he wanted to or not, Maximus sort of becomes this symbol of rebellion against the fake puppet leaders from above and those who gain wealth by taking so much from so many others and leaving them to fester amongst the poverty of their so-called own mess, which has really been created by a system of class rule instead of it being a fair, democratic, value-provided society. As he breaks down his opponent's attacks in the Colosseum, he too breaks down the barriers and the preconceived notions for how this upper class stakes their claim over so many below them. Maximus is a man of the people and a true honorable leader who wants to serve them to their best interests and not to his own selfish greed. He is a man who lives by codes of strength and honor above all, but who also places immense value into guarding the sanctity of his loved ones and of treasured friends around him. He knows both how to live a noble life in his professional and personal worlds, which is why he is so rightfully admired.
How can I reward Rome's greatest general?
Let me go home.
Home. Tell me about your home.
My house is in the hills above Tehillah. Pink stones that warm in the sun. Kitchen garden that smells of herbs in the day. Through the gate is a giant poplar. Figs, apples, pears. The soil, Marcus, black. Black like my wife's hair.
I envy you, Maximus. It's a good home. Worth fighting for.
Gladiator is a film that will stand the test of time because it shares and showcases values, principles, and ideals that will stand the test of time. Moreover, it is a film that is also so memorable with its quotes and reflect such introspective notions so eloquently and so beautifully that to me, they can be quotes that will echo on for an eternity. While the story of the hero's journey is an age-old adage that will continue on to be told for years to come, I personally will never forget and never not enjoy watching it unfold when it comes to the legendary plight of Maximus Decimus Meridius, the true king of Rome, and the true nobility of a man we could all learn from and aspire to.
I hear you?
Who?
Your family in the afterlife.
Oh, yes.
What do you say to them?
To my boy. I tell him I will see him again soon.
Now we are free. And we'll see you again. But not yet. Not yet.
Never